This is my revised stamplar build for the Greymoor patch. It still has the same focus on high mobility, sustain, and damage as before. The playstyle hasn't changed at all. It's just now the damage is so much more. So this video is just going to cover the non-CP setup, but I'll also put links in the description for the CP setup as well as an alternative non-mythic gear selection. The race is an orc mainly for the extra movement speed and cost reduction for sprinting, and I'm using the Serpent Mundus for extra stamina recovery. For the food, I'm using Dubious Camera and Throne for even more stamina recovery, and for the potions, I'm using standard tri-stat potions. For the stats, I'll put a link in the description to the UESP builds, so just click on whichever version of the build you want to see, and you'll see the stats there. So for the gear, I'm using 5 pieces Bone Pirate, 5 pieces Deadly Strikes on the front bar with a Master Bow on the back bar, Ring of the Wild Hunt, and 1 piece Bloodspawn. All 7 pieces are medium because my max stats are already in a pretty comfortable spot, and so rather than trying to maximize the Undaunted Metal passive, I'd rather get the most out of my medium armor passives, such as more crit, better sustain, better mobility. And for the traits, for the armor traits, I'm using 3 Impen, 4 Well Fitted. Remember, we have additional crit resist added to our character's base stats this patch, so we can easily get away with just 3 Impen and have all the crit resist we need. And that 4 Well Fitted is really nice for the cost reduction on roll dodge and sprint. That's on top of our orc passives that gives us extra sprint cost reduction, and our medium armor passives that gives us extra roll dodge cost reduction. So all around, we can be very mobile, and we're really not spending a lot of stamina for it. Bone Pirate's a nice set. It just gives us a nice amount of max stamina as well as stamina recovery. You have to use a drink buff in order for this set to work, so you want to stick with Dubious Camera and Throne most likely, and that'll give you a whole bunch of stamina and stamina recovery. This set drops in Blackheart Haven, which is one of the vanilla dungeons. It's pretty easy farm. And then Deadly Strikes. So this set is basically the meta for Stamina Templars. You know, often the reason I'm trying to avoid meta sets is because it conflicts with a certain kind of playstyle that I'm going for. But I actually can use this set, this patch, and totally not have to sacrifice my preferred playstyle at all. So this buffs the damage to our jabs by 20%, and if you've played a Stamplar before, you know that basically all of your damage comes from jabs. So just a straight 20% increase to jabs is a huge increase to our overall damage. And this set comes from one of the Cyrodiil vendors, so it's really easy to get a hold of. You can usually find it for pretty cheap at guild traders. Using 1 piece Bloodspawn for just a little bit of extra stamina recovery, and this can definitely be a flex spot. For example, you could use Molag Kenna for extra weapon damage if you don't feel like you need the recovery. So just whatever you think feels good there. And then I'm using the new Ring of the Wild Hunt mythic item, and this gives us an extra 15% movement speed at all times during combat. So that's basically equivalent to 3 Swift jewelry traits. So we don't have to use Swift at all in our jewelry. We can just go all infused on all 3 jewelry pieces, except I actually still am running 1 Swift because I haven't transmuted the Wild Hunt ring yet, but I do recommend going all infused just to get the most out of those glyphs there, and you're still going to have all the speed you need. I'm using a sharpened Deadly Strikes Maul with a Crusher enchantment. And then on the back bar, I have an infused Master Bow with a weapon damage enchantment. And so Deadly Strikes is not active on the back bar, just on the front bar. But we only really need it to be active on the front bar because we just need it to empower those jabs. And so the Master Bow, this thing is pretty awesome. It gives you 330 weapon damage against targets that are affected with your poison injection. And that's on top of the 450 weapon damage we get from that infused weapon damage glyph. So just hitting someone with your poison injection gives you an additional 780 weapon damage against that target. And then, of course, our jabs is being increased by 20% from our Deadly Strikes set. So we hit them with the poison injection, then we swap to the front bar and start jabbing them, and it's just an overall ton of damage coming at them. And also remember that the Dragonstar Arena, you can do this on normal now and get the non-perfected version of this bow, which is exactly what I did. It's incredibly easy. It only takes 4 people to do it. But if for some reason you can't get a hold of a master bow or you just don't feel like doing it, you could just use deadly strikes on both bars. That would be totally fine. Or another option would be a potentate's bow on the back bar for a little extra damage mitigation. So we'll talk about the skill bars. For my main spammable, of course, I'm using Biting Jabs. I'm also using Power of the Light, Binding Javelin, Rally, Repentance, and the Crescent Sweep Ultimate. And on the back bar, I'm using Razor Caltrops, Extended Ritual, Poison Injection, Restoring Focus, Resolving Vigor, and the Reviving Barrier Ultimate. So let's back up and talk about Repentance for a second. I think this ability is one of the keys to success for this build. It is free to cast. You can use it to drain nearby corpses to restore health and stamina. And this ability really enables you to stay bold, stay aggressive, because we know that if we get that kill, we'll be rewarded with that health and stamina return. So it can often be worth taking that risk, and it also allows us to sacrifice a little bit of sustain in favor of more damage in our build. Because again, we know that we'll use that damage to get more kills, and we'll get compensated for that sustain afterwards. And then the Crescent Sweep Ultimate, this is the Magicka morph rather than the Stamina morph. Even though this is a Stamplar, the Magicka morph still does more damage, and especially in no CP, it definitely does way more damage. Even with CP, I still prefer this ability. I think it hits a little harder, it's a little more bursty. I also want to talk about Extended Ritual. This is an AoE heal over time and a cleanse. And this is also our one and only Magicka ability. I've talked about this before. I think this is one of Stamplar's biggest advantages. They have very little reliance on Magicka because they typically only use one Magicka ability. Although there are some Stamplars that use Toppling Charge, that's a different story. But this build, it's just using Extended Ritual. And then Poison Injection. This is an extremely important ability. So it procs our Master Bow for that extra 330 weapon damage against that target. It also procs our infused weapon damage glyph for a combined total of 780 weapon damage against that target. So this is where a massive chunk of our damage comes from, and it's also actually a decent ranged, spammable, and execute as well. If you see someone that's kind of far away, you can't quite get to them, sometimes you can just spam this ability at them a couple of times and get that kill. So as far as the strategy goes, what you want to do is try to keep your Caltrops and Extended Ritual on the ground as much as possible. Be sure and keep Rally and Restoring Focus active at all times as well. And then for your combo, try to make your enemy stand in your Caltrops, then hit them with your Poison Injection, then swap to the front bar and tag them with your Power of the Light, then hit them with your Crescent Sweep Ultimate, stun them with your Javelin, then lay into them with your jabs. And I want to note that it's important to keep in mind that this is just an example of how your combo could go. It's important to change things up and not do it the exact same way every time, because good players are going to pick up on that pattern very quickly, and then they're just going to dodge or block your Javelin every time, and generally just make it difficult for you to land your combo the way you want to. So, you know, I think opening up with Caltrops, Poison Injection, and Power of the Light, you can pretty much do those the same every single time, but then after that, you kind of want to mix up your Javelin, jabs, and Crescent Sweep so that you can be unpredictable and stun them when they're not expecting it. So you kind of have to do a little bit of front bar jazz with that. Also, keep in mind that with this build, your primary advantage is mobility, and your biggest weakness is resistance. So you definitely want to utilize that movement that the Wild Hunt Ring is giving you, because that is your primary defense. So you want to employ hit and run tactics. You want to use line of sight, get your kills quickly, and then get back on the move as quickly as you can. I think that brings us to the end of my Stamina Templar build for the Greymoor patch. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have anything you'd like to ask or share, please feel free to leave a comment or email me at ketsparrowhawk@gmail.com. And until next time, good luck out there.